and welcome to Money, Money, Money. Health insurance is undergoing a big change, and it's a change for the better. Effective the 1st of October, all health insurance policies must comply with new regulatory norms, which, among other things, increase the scope of coverage, define aspects like pre-existing diseases, and ensure standardization of health plans across insurance providers on several very important parameters. Today, we will take you through all of these very important changes so that you can make the most of your health cover. I'm Surabhi Upadhyay, and joining me today is a very important panel of experts. We have representatives from the industry itself, and of course, we have personal finance experts as well, people who have expertise in helping you pick the right insurance products. So let me start off by welcoming Sanjeev Bajaj, Joint Chairman and Managing Director of Bajaj Capital. We also have Policy Bazaar's Amit Chhabra joining in. And then from the insurance company's perspective, we have T.A. Ramalingam, Chief Technical Officer at Bajaj Allianz General Insurance, and Dr. Bhavtosh Mishra, Director Claims Underwriting and Products at Max Bupa. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining in, and this is a very important subject that we have taken up today, because I really believe that even before you're thinking of your investments, you need to ensure that you have the right insurance cover, and health insurance perhaps is the starting point. Okay, well, let me start by getting a quick reaction from our panel of experts, starting with the insurance companies themselves. So Dr. Bhavtosh, tell us what you think, and how you think this is going to impact the customer. In general, does it mean better insurance coverage and more claims getting honored?
This is going to bring transparency, because across hundreds of products that are available in the market from scores of health and general insurance companies, many a provision starting with some key definitions, exclusions, etc. gets standardized with this. And any kind of a standardization of wordings, etc. brings in a lot more transparency. It may not be simplification, but certainly a standardization and transparency-led initiative.
Okay. Mr. Ramalingam, your thoughts? Is this indeed going to improve the customer experience?
I think it's very essential that whatever the changes that has been brought about is actually implemented in the best of the spirits, and I'm sure that this is going to improve the overall customer experience, because health sometimes was becoming a bit of a mystery for people with different exclusions being there in different policies. And I think now with this standardization coming in, I think there will be a lot more transparency, and we'll see better customer experience as far as purchase of any health policy is concerned.
Okay, great. Now, gentlemen, both of you represent the insurance sector. Allow us about 5 to 6 minutes, because what we'll do is we'll take the help of our other two experts to go over the nuances, the simple changes, and then we're going to come back and ask the insurance companies how this is going to be implemented. So now I'm going to start off with you, Sanjeev. You know, the thing is that the broad understanding is that step number 1, there is a list of diseases that can no longer be excluded. Step number 2, whatever can be permanently excluded, that's also been defined very, very clearly. The procedures that must be now covered, that has also been defined. So tell me what for you are the most important takeaways, and then we'll come to the exclusions, the ones that cannot be excluded, all those lists step by step in just a bit. Sanjeev?
Yeah, I think these are fantastic changes. As you know, we were trying to explain, this brings standardization across the industry. So for me, what is the most exciting part is now that there are things which earlier used to be excluded. So now part of the things have been included in the cost of the room. So if you look at, there is a list of items, like even very, very small items, like, if you had to give a urine test, the cost of the box of the urine test used to get excluded, and so many other items, like even soap dispensers, and it was amazing the way hospitals used to charge. They would charge you absolutely for everything. So now all those things become a part of the cost of the room. Same as there is now things which have become part of the cost of OT, like disposables, gloves, some surgical equipment, some sutures, etc. So now these are now a part of the operating theater cost. Now, this is nothing to do with you. Earlier, a customer would feel very, very helpless. He would look at certain things which seem too obvious, and they would be excluded, because the hospital was billing it in that manner. So now that this is a part of the OT. So it makes make the customer experience much better. Also, I'm very excited about is that now what has been done is that there were certain daycare procedures which be excluded or included as per the discretion of the company, like oral chemotherapy. Now, some companies were covering it, some companies were not paying for it. But today, this is a treatment which is happening, stem cell therapy. So there are 16 such treatments which now they have been said that they will be paid for. So there is, so I may be wrong on the numbers. So, don't, so whether they, because, there are so many changes, I don't want to be quoted on that.
No, we get the larger point.
Yeah.
Sanjeev, allow me to come in there. We get the larger point. So let's take it step by step. Sanjeev's made two very important points. So as a customer, you should be aware that now more procedures are going to get covered. Things like stem cells, robotic surgeries. Earlier, a company could choose to exclude that from the claim. Now that will be included. So make sure you check for that. And then, of course, some of the consumables, as Sanjeev mentioned. Now, Amit, let me come to you on the other aspects, because the definitions become very important. There is a definition of pre-existing disease, or what can be a waiting period. How long can a company sort of bring in this waiting period? So do enlighten our viewers about this.
Sure. So I think, one of the, just coming from the customer side here, one of the grievances that a lot of customers had when they bought health insurance was that they bought something or they were sold something, and then later on, say 5 years, 10 years down the line, when they had to take a claim, so suddenly they realized that their policy had some features or didn't have some features, and as a result, the claim was denied. So there was a bit of a mistrust with the health insurance ecosystem which was there. Now, in most of these cases, it was actually the customer not understanding the definitions properly or not understanding the terms and conditions of the policy properly enough. And it is technical, it is complicated, and customers can easily miss it. So that's where the regulator has come in and said that all the policy definitions, terms and conditions, even the way it's written on a policy document, they will now be standardized. So for the customer now, a pre-existing disease means the same thing. If they buy a policy from anywhere, any company, the definition of pre-existing disease, the way it's mentioned on the policy document remains exactly the same. And this applies to almost every other thing on the policy document. So the way exclusions are written, the way if there are any permanent exclusions, they have to be mentioned in a particular way on the policy document. I think what that does is it just makes things very, very simple, clean, and black and white for the customer. Because see, the thing is, somebody buying a policy today may not claim today, but may claim 10 years down the line. Now, very, very difficult to to go and cite a communication that happened then with whoever you bought the policy from. So there was this grade which led to customer grievances a lot of times. So now that it's one clear definition, a customer can actually go and buy from anywhere. You can buy online, offline, practically anywhere. You get the same policy. It's written in the exactly same format, and I think it makes buying health insurance a lot simpler. Now, coming to the definition. So, for example, pre-existing diseases, now they've been classified very, very categorically as two things. So, if you've been taking a medication, or you've been diagnosed, or you've sought any sort of treatment for any disease in the last 48 months or 4 years, then that disease is categorized as a pre-existing disease. So that means it will be covered in your health insurance policy, but there may be a waiting period. Now, this waiting period depends on policy to policy. It may be 1 year, it may be 4 years, depending upon the kind of policy you buy. But it will be classified as a pre-existing disease.
So,
also an important induction in this is...
So Amit, let me actually bring in the representatives from the insurance sector also, because PED, or pre-existing diseases, that's the biggest bugbear. You want to know for what you will get coverage and for what you won't, which is why it's also important to look at a list of permanent exclusions which an insurance company can go by. So an insurance company can go out and say that if you have this condition, we will not cover you. Now, I'll give some examples, and the graphics will come up for our viewers on the screen. Things like epilepsy, heart ailment, stroke, chronic liver disease, kidney disease, hepatitis B, even HIV and AIDS. Now, this comes under a list which is called permanent exclusions that can be allowed. Now, what does this mean, and what does it mean for people who perhaps suffer from these conditions? So, Dr. Bhaptosh, let me come to you. Does it mean that they will not get any insurance at all? How should one understand this list of permanent exclusions which are being allowed by the regulator?
Sure. To the quite contrary, actually, lot of insurance companies, for example, if somebody had a cancer, wouldn't give a policy, health insurance policy. So contrary to that situation, what it allows now is for the insurance company to exclude cancers from that policy for the good and cover maybe hundreds and thousands of other conditions that the person is still susceptible to you and could suffer in future. So this is actually a better thing that the customers who were unable to get a health insurance policy because of certain serious and severe conditions would now be able to take a policy with exclusion of that one condition that the customer may have.
So, Mr. Ramalingam, let me bring you in on this as well. What should the interpretation be? And give us an example. Now, if someone, let's say, has a heart ailment or someone has a liver disease, which is excluded, so they don't get coverage for that, that condition could lead to other complications as well. So, isn't it a bit of a grey area? Then tomorrow the company can still turn around and say, this is an ailment relating to the heart. So, anyway, your claim gets rejected. Explain to us how this might work.
I think if you look at the earlier times, that was one of the reasons why most of the companies used to refuse the coverage. They never used to offer coverage for these kind of ailments. But now with these 16 permanent ailments coming in, what they say, what it means to the customer is that at least for the other segment of his ailments, he gets covered. Maybe he may have a permanent exclusion for the kidney part, but for the other ailments, which earlier we were not actually covering, now he gets covered for that. That's the biggest advantage arising out of this particular coverage coming in. And that's where I feel that a lot of customers who were not earlier getting covered will have the benefit of the medical coverage. And I think that from that point of view, the regulator has done a very good job for those people who were earlier considered not insurable.
So let me ask a quick follow-up, Mr. Ramalingam. What happens to waiting periods for people with pre-existing diseases? What is the average today? And with these new norms coming in, will the waiting period remain the same, go up, go down?
See, as far as the waiting period is concerned, earlier also the companies used to have different waiting periods. Now here, if they actually declare it in the proposal form, then the waiting period will be decided by the underwriters, and I think that can be intimated to the customer in time. Earlier, this confusion was to there as regards the waiting period, and this used to lead to lot of grievances at the time of claim. And now with this standardization coming in, I think all the things will fall in place.
We surely hope so, because that will be a big relief to a lot of people and many people who are suffering from certain pre-existing ailments. We'll take a break on that note, but we're not done, because the other good news is that several new ailments now have to be covered. Your insurer cannot turn you away if you, let's say, have mental illness. Very important discussion continues after the break. Welcome back. Here with Money, and this week we're discussing a very important subject. The changes that have come into place, they're already in effect starting the 1st of October on health insurance. So let's go back to our panel of experts. And now, Sanjeev, help us understand this. There are certain exclusions that are no longer being allowed. In simple man's language, this means these illnesses have to be covered, right? Some illnesses that I understood were genetic diseases, stammering, dyslexia, mental illness. So what does it mean for people who might be suffering from these ailments?
Yeah, now what has been done is that what can be excluded has been defined. There are only 16 illnesses which can be excluded now. And so they are earlier, there was a lot of ambiguity around that. Today, now they can, even insurance companies can do a permanent exclusion. So that is a good part from the insurance company. From the client also, it's slightly negative, but it's also positive for him, because he at least knows what is covered and what is not covered. And anything which is not in those 16 things cannot be any more permanently excluded. So whether it is a company A or a company B or a company C. See, earlier they were good companies, they were bad companies, and there were some companies which were somewhere in between. So, some bad fish used to create a bad name for the whole industry, that the claims don't get paid or these things get delayed. So now point is that when the clarity has been brought in, and it wasn't all that the company wanted to do anything wrong, it's just that they wanted to make money, and they came out with conditions which were not, what people would understand in their common sense. So, or they would not be common sense conditions. So now, with more standardization, it is going to be better. There are 16 diseases like HIV/AIDS, which if a person already has, then it can be given as a permanent exclusion. So at least the person with an HIV/AIDS was an exclusion. He could not get health coverage for anything else. Today, he can get health coverage for everything else than HIV and AIDS. And the reason that is not getting covered is because that he's already contracted that. So that's not an insurance. It's a certainty, and no insurance company will pay for something which is a certainty. So now what is going to happen is that, other than these 16 conditions, people are going to get, and these list of people like us are making these conditions available on our website. And it's very, very easy for people to look up, okay, what are the things I can't be insured for? What are the things I can?
Yes.
And we have started with these new conditions coming, and we have started a concept called health portfolio review.
Sure.
Or health insurance review, which we are offering.
Sure. So Sanjeev, I will have to step in over there because we're running a little short on time. So trying to cover all the important aspects. Amit, tell us if we've missed out anything on the fine print. On pre-existing diseases, tell me about this 3-month period. I mean, once I buy a policy, and I'm a healthy person, so today in good faith, I don't declare anything because I'm not suffering from any condition. Now, if genuinely, let's say I develop a heart ailment in 3 months, or God forbid, I'm diagnosed with some form of cancer. So what happens then? If it's treated as pre-existing, then there goes my claim.
Yes, see, this is more, actually for the customer. And I'll give you a situation why, just to make you understand why. So a person, let's say, takes a policy today, and let's say they file a claim for hypertension, say 5 years down the line. Now, human body is complex, right? It's very difficult to exactly, justify or mention when exactly did you develop a certain disease. And for diseases as common as hypertension or say diabetes, it becomes very difficult to pinpoint to a certain, a certain date as to this is when your hypertension actually developed. So this used to, again be a grievance point for a lot of customers because, at the time of claim, based on what the treating doctor would have said to, the patient and to the insurance company, there would be a case of saying that, you developed this just after buying the policy or just before buying the policy. And if it was just before buying the policy, it could be a potential case of misrepresentation by the customer. Customer potentially didn't declare what he should have declared. Now, the thing is, there was obviously, because of the way the treatments happened, there was again lack of clarity there. So that's where the regulator has come in and has clearly clarified the definition of pre-existing disease. Now, apart from the 48 months definition we spoke about earlier, now what they're basically saying is if you develop a disease within 3 months of buying a new policy, that also gets classified as a pre-existing disease. So that basically makes things clear because in the long run, let's say 3-4 years down the line, when you actually make a claim, there can be there can be a clear pinpointed reason to rejecting or accepting a claim. So it cannot be left in gray any longer. Okay. So let's say if a customer buys a policy and then within the next 90 days develops a disease, that will also get classified as a part of the pre-existing diseases itself.
Okay.
And the waiting period will apply to them too.
Okay, got that. So now very quickly, we need to ask some important questions to, our experts from the insurance sector. And that important question is cost, gentlemen. Now that coverage is improving, more diseases are coming in. What I hear is that premiums will perhaps start rising. Dr. Bhabatosh, over to you first. Is that true?
Yes, it is, because the regulator itself recognizes that when we reduce exclusions, enhance benefits and coverage, there would be an impact on cost, and that's why the regulator allows up to 5% increase on the existing premium itself on account of compliance with these guidelines itself. This is what immediate cost impact could be. Of course, there could be long term. How much impact would come in is currently not yet known because many of the provisions brought in were not covered earlier. As we go along and more data and experience develops, then premium could get fine-tuned. As you know, insurance requires a little longitudinal and extensive data to be able to price a peril. But some of the coverages, for example, of modern treatments, some of the coverages with regards to moratorium period after which 8 years the policy becomes non-contestable, also have to be borne in mind that it could have what kind of premium impact in the long run? Because how health operates is somebody who has a hepatitis B today or a hepatitis C today doesn't get a liver failure in a year or two. There's something called as an incubation period, and we got very familiar with incubation period with COVID also, that it takes about 2 weeks to for somebody to get the disease and infect others. So some of the diseases, the incubation period is in terms of years. Now at some level, if somebody has hepatitis C or B and does not disclose, after 8 years the policy is non-contestable, and that is when hepatocellular carcinoma, commonly called as the liver cancer, or cirrhosis or a failure of liver could happen. So some of the cost impact are upfront, which we know, and regulator allows 5%. Some are intermediate or medium term that we will know with data, and perhaps some will be fairly long term, and we will only have to wait to see what happens.
So, Mr. Ramalingam, if I could come to you on the same point on what you feel about costs, and also what happens to our existing policies? As a policy holder, are all these changes automatically getting incorporated? Will there be a midterm increase in premiums? Help us understand this.
Basically, as you're aware, health pricing is done based on the data of premium and claims, and our actuarial team is one which actually works on doing the pricing of it. So why earlier certain things like epilepsy or mental illness or neurological disorders were not covered was, one is that we were not covering it. There is hardly much of data available for even the actuaries to price it. So now that since we are going to cover it over a period of time, we will be able to understand the cost and the premium analysis. Maybe it will take 3 to 4 years to come at some kind of a correct pricing. So from that point of view, although the regulator has allowed a 5% increase that can be charged to the current premium, but if somebody wants to relook at their own pricing pattern, they can go through the file and use route, and then make the pricing for these products. So I think over a 2-3 year period, maybe the kind of pricing structure will also kind of get standardized. But since there is lack of data available currently for various procedures that we are going to cover from 1st of October, there is a bit of uncertainty on the pricing methodology that would be.
But the general direction is up. That's what I get hearing you gentlemen. Very quickly, do existing policies already get upgraded to reflect all of this, or does a customer have to do something to sort of, get these new norms in as part of their existing policy?
From 1st of October, anyhow, all the new policies will have to carry these new features. And all those policies coming up for renewal will also be eligible for all these new features. So from 1st of October, the new features will be available for them.
Okay, gentlemen, this has been a very, very useful and utilitarian, very important discussion. Thank you. It is, of course, a very nuanced subject. We could go on for another half an hour to an hour on this. But at least I think for starters, this is an eye-opener for a lot of people who perhaps haven't had a chance to look at the changes that are coming in. And these are very important ones that we cannot afford to ignore. Thank you for your time today and for simplifying this for our viewers. All right, on that note, we are going to wind up this edition of Money, Money, Money. Hopefully, this has been a useful conversation for you. Keep sending us your feedback, queries, and comments.